All right, I will get started. Good morning, everyone, and welcome. I'm Amanda Powell. I'm the Client Development Manager at Green Resources. We're a recruiting firm that helps you locate and land great talent. And our vision is to connect people and companies in such a way that jobs become purposeful, impactful, and long-term careers. I'd like to thank the Raleigh Chamber for giving us the opportunity to be the co-presenting sponsor, along with Credit Suisse for today's program. Thank you also to our series sponsors, Carolina Ballet, Citrix, Eaton, MERS Aesthetics, and Wells Fargo. We hope you find this program to be beneficial and that you'll join us again for future events. During this session, let's stay connected. Join today's discussion on social media. We can all use the hashtag RaleighCPW and tag the Chamber using @RaleighChamber. I'm excited to hear from this panel of leaders as they share insights on how the pandemic has presented new challenges and opportunities for women in the workforce, since many are working remotely while taking care of children, handling virtual schooling, and managing a household. Our speakers today are Dr. Kasey Ashton, Director of Wake Invest in Women at Wake Tech, Dr. Carrie Bartek, Executive Director at Wake Tech, Beth Briggs, Senior Consultant at Armstrong McGuire, and Trinesia Martin, Deputy Director at Wake County Human Resources. Wake Invest in Women is a collaboration between Wake County, Wake Tech Community College, businesses, and community partners to effect large-scale change. The group, led by an esteemed steering committee, is focused on STEM careers. Please join me in welcoming our speakers.
Should we get started? Wonderful. Hello, everybody. My name is Kasey Ashton, and as Amanda said, I'm the director of Wake Invest in Women. We are a collective impact approach to closing the wage gaps in Wake County. Our current focus is on STEM occupations, but that won't be our only focus. That is an area that our research has shown has clear and significant gaps. And these are high earning, high growth occupations. And so we're focused there initially, as well as working on closing the representation and wage equity gaps for more specifically, Black African-American women and Hispanic Latino women. So a lot of work to do there, but I work with amazing women on our steering committee and a few gentlemen to address these challenges that Wake County has. And today I have the pleasure of having 3 of my steering committee members here today to talk with you, answer some questions kind of about the impact that COVID has had on all of our lives, especially as women who are professionals and quite possibly balancing quite a bit in this environment. So we'll begin. I'll have each of the panelists introduce themselves. And ladies, if you would also share a little bit about yourselves, but also kind of talk a little bit about how the pandemic has been impacting your professional and personal lives as well. Carrie, would you like to start?
Sure. I'm Carrie Bartek, and I'm Executive Director of College Initiatives and Assessment at Wake Tech, and Executive Director of the initiative. I am very fortunate to work with Kasey, who's a great director, and the rest of the steering committee. My background is in education. I have held leadership roles, and also I do research. And some of the things that have impacted me professionally are, everything went online. As of March 16th, we turned on a dime. And Wake Tech did an amazing job at making that transition. Fortunately, the work I do is transitions online very well. So we just we had infrastructure in place to transition all our meetings online, and my work is mostly on computers, so I'm very lucky. Wake Tech's lucky that our enrollment has not dropped. It has remained steady, so that's not a worry. Now, personally, I am an empty nester with 2 20-year-olds who are navigating their bubbles. in COVID-19. So that's been quite a challenge. You know, what bubble are you going to be in? Are you going to be in our bubble or somebody else's bubble? And what does that mean for us? And then I also have a mother who I'm a caregiver for my mother, and she lives in an independent living location. So that in itself has put some constraints and, you know, having to navigate those issues as well. So that's me.
Thank you, Carrie. Tunisia?
Hi, everyone. My name is Trenesia Martin, and I am the Deputy Human Resources Director for Wake County Government. And actually, the pandemic, it has affected my professional career, but in a positive way. Here at Wake County Government, we have had to reimagine how we think of the realm of human resources and how we do that. And still maintain employee engagement and employee development in these critical times, as well as maintaining services to our customers. So we've launched this new initiative called Wake 2.0 to help us to get us there. And it looks like we are kind of leading the way in this effort on how you can reimagine the way you work.
Very nice. Thank you, Tunisia. Beth?
Good morning. I'm Beth Briggs. I am a lifelong advocate for women, and I have worked my whole career, which has been a long time, to help advance the status of women in North Carolina. I've been the executive director of the Council for Women. I've served as the executive director of Dress for Success and worked with a lot of philanthropic organizations, primarily over the last 35 plus years. And I continue to look at what's happening to women during this pandemic. I, for one, am fortunate. I have, you know, I'm living, I have an employment, I have a family, I have 3 children that all were in other parts of the world that moved back to Raleigh. And so I have 2 grandchildren who now, a 3 and a 4-year-old that are living here, including the 2-year-old and his family who lived with us for 5 months during the transition. So I think we're adapting. I think we're trying to be safe. And we're looking as we start to rediscover this new world.
Thank you, everybody. Well, we're so excited to have you here and have you share your experiences and your expertise, you know, in these COVID times. A lot of people are questioning, should I be continuing to push forward in my career during a time that feels really unstable? You know, the question is it okay to put advancement on the back burner for a while, or should I be pushing forward? So Tunisia, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure, Kasey. Well, as you can imagine, COVID-19 pandemic has cost at least about 47 million Americans their jobs. It's made it very difficult for 2020 college graduates to find work, and it's revealed that employees with full-time jobs have serious plans to exit their roles soon as a direct result of COVID, which will open even more job opportunities for those that are currently looking in the labor market. The labor market, for the first time, as we see it, is expanding as a result of industry contractions. So job opportunities in some industries are rising, and they're looking for flexible applicants. You know, think about technology, think about the digital entertainment, think about online learning, essential services, and healthcare workers. And that's just to name a few. But these industries are all hiring and actively seeking candidates. So I would say be open to new industries and opportunities. Do your research to explore how your background can add value. And this is an opportunity for candidates to grow in their careers and also to add new skill sets and knowledge to their current backgrounds.
Wonderful, thank you. Beth, what are your thoughts?
So I agree completely. I think that what you said was extraordinary, that this is a time for change and we have to be flexible and adaptable. But I do find there are people that are experiencing dysfunction. They are not happy with where they are. They feel as though they are trapped. Sometimes people have told me they don't feel respected or that they see opportunities for leadership. And I think that this becomes a point of really looking carefully within yourself. Are you comfortable where you're doing? Do you feel like your skills, your talents, your gifts are being utilized? And if not, perhaps it is a time to start looking. Do your research. Look at, do you feel alive in your job? Because I think that we come to this point of feeling this pandemic is making us to question everything in our lives. Are we of service? Are we of value? And I think there's that time to look at a small little voice in yourself to say, am I where I'm supposed to be? Is this a time of change and transition? And if so, what is it I'm supposed to be doing?
Mhm. Those are all great kind of soul-searching questions to be able to kind of utilize a time that feels very unstable and be able to maybe go a little deeper, and sounds like almost, you know, find yourself a little bit if you, when you answer those questions, you don't feel that sense of, oh, I'm where I'm supposed to be. So those are really great questions. I appreciate that. Thank you. So, you know, Tunisia mentioned transferable skills, and we often hear the importance of transferable skills. Carrie, would you talk to us a little bit about what does that mean when we're talking about giving advice for women who are looking to expand their skill set and being able to, you know, identify skills that are transferable? Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Oh, Carrie, I think you're still muted.
You're still muted. The phrase of the year.
Yes.
I think when you talk about transferable skills, we'll do it in the context of the job market, right, and the occupations that are out there. One thing that I'll riff off of what Tunisia said is, if you look at our job market in Wake County and specifically in our metropolitan area, you'll see that there are opportunities out there. That opportunity, even though there are people hurting and have been laid off, our unemployment rate is lower than the state and the nation. It has rebounded from 11% unemployment in April to 6% right now. And although we want to see it lower, that's a good sign of recovery. And the skills that, and part of the reason why we focus the Wake Invest in Women project on STEM careers is because those are the careers, those are the job areas that have the highest salaries and the highest demands. And so if you look at the job data, what you see is computer and mathematical occupations just ramping up. The demand is there. They cannot fill it. One of the top occupations is software developers. They just can't get enough of those. Computer user support specialists. The other high occupation area of demand is the healthcare industry. Registered nurses, can't get enough of them. And then sales representatives also comes up. And a lot of that is focused in our professional, technical, and scientific industries. So when you talk about transferable skills, what you start to look at in the last 60 days in the post-COVID environment, you're looking at digital skills. You know, upgrade, those are transferable skills no matter what job you go into. Those are not the only transferable skills. I did a quick run through of what those transferable skills are in our area over the 30 days. And so definitely the digitization of our economy that we have to take into account. So Microsoft Office, computer literacy skills, and Microsoft Excel are skills that employers are looking for right now in job ads, but also those what we call soft skills, transferable skills, communication skills, teamwork and collaboration, and organizational skills. And so when you're looking at the job market, highlighting those skills that are in demand is one way to help and land a different job and remake yourself, like Beth said. You wanted to know also what what advice do we have for women looking to expand their skill set? You want me to move on to that, Kasey?
Sure.
You know, one thing our president, Dr. Scott Rawls, talks about and really is all about, and Wake Tech is all about, is what we call skill laddering. this idea of lifelong learning. It used to be that, you know, you would go to school and you would get whatever degree you had, and then you would take off and, you know, that was it. But that's not how it is anymore in our society. It's, you really need to look at the skills that you need that are in the job market with the jobs you want, and then you know, continue to look at upskilling. Sometimes upskilling with one certificate can land you you know, a substantial increase in your salary and not have to go back for a bachelor's or even an associate's degree. But you need to, you know, understand what those are. So some ways, so this laddering concept I think is important. There are different ways to ladder. One way I just talked about is an academic pathway where you may start with a certificate. Let's talk about software developers, for example. Maybe you get a certificate, a 12-credit certificate or a non-credit certificate in computer programming. And then you build on that over time while you're working. You build on that over time so that you have stackable credentials into maybe an associate's degree and then transfer, because most software developers, you need a bachelor's degree. However, that's not the only laddering opportunities there are out there. There are other ways to ladder your experience. And so you may want to do a practical pathway, which is a path for learning applied skills while working in various fields, such as licensed professions, including healthcare, the trades. This competency is typically evaluated through professional exams, and in many countries this is called vocational and professional education. In the US it's often called workforce training. And then the third type of laddering is the blended pathway, and the best example of that would be an apprenticeship type of program. And in that program, it's a path for learning applied occupational and or technical skills that combines on-the-job training with classroom training, also referred to as dual education model, because you earn credit for learning at work and in the classroom. They can also form as a bridge to move between practical and academic pathways. So I think the sum total of that, Kasey, of this laddering concept is really important. You're never stuck. You have opportunities to what we call upskill and ladder into other occupations.
Wonderful, thank you. And that was really great information. And I like the language of upskilling, and that concept of, you know, it can seem intimidating to like, oh, to get into, you know, software development, I'm going to need to go back to school and get a 4-year degree. But you know, it's not necessarily that you have to do that right away, but that there is the option of laddering up. Wake Tech is an amazing resource for folks to be able to do that.
Just wanted to add too, I know several women I talked to said COVID's a great opportunity for that, right? So many things are closed. Why not use your time for upskilling?
Yeah, absolutely. Beth, do you have any additional thoughts or reaction?
I would just say that I would suggest all of you look at Wake Invest for Women and the work and the research that's being done here, because it's quite remarkable that we continue to find that women, the salaries are not equal. And a lot of it has to do with what are the jobs you're going after. And the research is showing that those skilled jobs that Wake Tech's providing are really quite remarkable of some of the ways they can help advance your career. I primarily have worked within the nonprofit sector, and there are a lot of positions available within the nonprofit sector. We're looking for people that are leaders, that have a passion and a commitment to make a difference in something. We're looking at people who have leadership, who have finance, who have communications, who have fundraising, who have all of those different pieces that they feel like they can bring something to the table to make a change. And so there are many opportunities within the nonprofit sector. I think, as Carrie was saying, you really need to look around. There are a lot of jobs being listed right now, and take a look at what those expectations are for the jobs. What are the skill sets they're looking at? What are the qualifications? If it's a job you want and you don't have those qualifications, that's when you need to start working on those. Start building your materials, your resumes, and really looking at how do you improve yourself. I think you also want to start talking to people who are in the field that you're interested in. and find out, what do you need? What are you looking for? What are the skill sets that I can bring? And get a real clarity about, and I keep going to where you want to be, what you want to do with your life, and what are the skill sets that you need to improve. But within this nonprofit sector, there are many opportunities, and those gifts and talents you have to bring are really critical. So knowing you're valued and knowing there are people that need those skills and talents to come to help them support their work.
That's wonderful, and the perfect lead-in to our next question. So the research tells us, unfortunately, that often women will choose not to apply for a position because when they read the qualifications and the preferred qualifications, if they don't meet 100% or nearly 100% of those qualifications, they won't apply. We also know that the gentlemen do not suffer that same and they are much more likely to apply for positions, even if they only maybe meet 25% of the qualifications. And the thing here is you get none of the jobs that you don't apply for. And so, Trinesia, what advice do you have for women who are job hunting and maybe are seeing that list of qualifications that Beth mentioned and are going, oh no, I don't meet enough, I'm not going to do it. Oh, Trinesia, you're still muted.
Right. Well, I think it kind of goes back to what my colleague Carrie mentioned earlier. So we first have to start with those transferable skills, and in talking with women, sometimes it's very difficult for them to identify what transferable skills really are. So, I mean, in summary, those are those general skills that can be transferred between jobs and quite frankly, industries. They can include soft skills such as communication, which is key to any job, regardless of where it is, problem solving skills, teamwork, those computer skills, being very digital and adaptable, professional writing, customer service, research, even leadership. And those are just to name a few, so it's not an exhaustive list. But transferable skills are a life raft in this COVID economy. Mm-hmm. So here's what you can do to confidently share your transferable skills. The very first thing I would recommend is take out the titles in your resume. Remove the titles from your last jobs and just think about what was it that you really did at a very high level. For example, if you're teaching school is a great background for planning and project management. Even though those two roles are nothing alike, they are clearly transferable skills. But when the title is removed, the skills will show up more. And let go of your industry. I know a lot of times we're kind of married and like to stay in the industries that we're in if we have worked 10, 15 years to build within a particular industry. But a majority, say about 56% of job seekers say they're looking for work in the same industry from which they were laid off. Well, that's more than about 20 million people casting a net in the very industries that were the hardest hit when the economy went into a free fall. If you were a restaurant worker or a travel agent, or you used to work for a rental car company, the sooner you release the identity and that job label, the better off you'll be. So today, considering a new career often means looking into a new industry. Softening up your strategy is another thing that I would recommend. Job seekers that have a weaker grasp of soft skills than they do hard skills, only about 40% really believe that they can capture soft skills on their resume, something like teamwork or communication and leadership. They find it very difficult to capture that, as compared to the 45% who say the same for hard skills like project management or software expertise or inventory management. Soft skills are typically the most transferable between jobs, and they will be massively important for workers in industries that's been hit the hardest by COVID. So you have to ask yourself, what are your top soft skills, and then write them down. Then ask yourself, what are your top transferable skills? Write those down as well. And then what's an industry that would make you say, wow, didn't think that you can make that leap, but oftentimes you can once you put it down on pen and paper. You will really see that you qualify for more jobs than you don't qualify for. So that idea might be holding on to, you know, an industry that could be potentially holding you back. You really want to kind of let go of that and then rebuild your resume by thinking on the approach of listing skills and highlighting skills more so than job labels, so that you don't get overlooked for positions. So basically what you're doing in essence is you're really reinventing yourself. You know, start with the understanding, the new story that surrounds your soft skills, because that approach is one that really would lead to those hard job results you're looking for.
That is an amazing advice, and really important, especially with those transferable skills, soft skills. I've started seeing in some of the research in some of the industries, they're working on changing their language to say core skills, because I've often been in situations where the hard skills were more valued, even though the people doing the hiring knew they needed the soft skills. They paid more attention to the hard because soft didn't sound as important. And so some companies are switching their language to core skills. And so that might be another way of kind of thinking about it. If you are struggling to come up with your list, what are some of those core skills that I have? And then even perhaps some examples of that project management that you've done. You know, if you have been managing all of your children and their schooling and your job and all of those things, you know how to work in a very fast-paced environment that changes often. Beth, Carrie, what about you? What are some thoughts that you have?
Yeah, related to what Trinisha said, all of those things, yes, but what the research says is that women tend to undersell themselves too. And they don't have, so often they come in with less confidence, so that on the resume, it doesn't always come out. You may have these skills, but you may not be selling yourself and selling these skills. So just be aware that it's a tendency for, you know, again, broad brush gender, but it is, the research says it's a tendency for us to undersell ourselves. You should be confident though, because what the research says in Wake County is that we have more education. Women in general have more education, have more skills, are over, you know, are more than qualified, but yet still have a wage gap. So when you're thinking about putting your resume together, you know, remember that you have the skills. The other thing I would say is definitely do your homework. And sometimes doing your homework is hard because some of the, I don't know how you do your labor homework, but there is a tool called NC Works where you can actually research what the skills are for a specific job. Categories for specific jobs. You can look and see what the wages are, you know, what the ranges are for given experience levels, and you can tailor your resume and your interviews and toward the skills that you know that job is going to need. Sometimes employers also have trouble iterating what it is that they want in a candidate. And so knowing the job market very well and knowing that application and putting those skills there that you know that job has because you've done your research can sometimes, I think, be very impressive. So I would just say, you know, make sure you're not underselling yourself and make sure you do your homework to know what those skills are.
And I have an off-the-cuff question for you, ladies, so I apologize, you didn't prepare for this one. But I've often seen resumes that are so condensed down to try and fit on a single page, because I know there used to be advice that your resume should be only one page long. Would you say that that is still something that jobs hiring people are looking for, that they want a really short one, or should people who are looking to apply for jobs beef their resume up more is there a range of pages for length?
Well, I'll take that on, Kasey. So it really depends on the position that you're applying for. So your more higher level positions, the more executive level roles that you are applying for, you definitely want your resume to have enough in there so that it showcases your strengths as an executive leader, so that they really get an idea of your skill set and your background. So I would not limit myself to a one-pager if a one-pager doesn't adequately share your experiences that well. So if you don't, so certain positions where you're not reaching to that level, I wouldn't fluff up a resume just to get multiple pages, because employers can see through that. And so you want, and it's quality. You want to focus more on the quality of the content you put in there versus the length of pages that you have. So that would be my advice.
And I agree completely with what Trinisa just said, but you also recognize how competitive this world right now is for executive positions. I recently had a position that had 420 applicants for it, and I am reading every one of those applicants' resumes, and I want to see who that person is. I want to see their background, and I often find that you undersell yourself in one page. That I want to see your jobs, I want to see your education, and sometimes I find that these sort of fancy resumes with pictures and, it's split up. I don't get as much information about you, and I want to know who you are, what you've done, what your skills are. So I would say I don't want the academic 10-page resume, but give me a 2-page resume.
Wonderful, thank you. I appreciate y'all your willingness to go off the cuff with me for a moment there. I want to transition a little bit here. A lot of the research talks about how important it is to have mentors throughout your career. And so, Carrie, I'd love for you to share, have you had mentors throughout your career, and did you actively seek them out or participate in maybe a formal program, that kind of thing?
Yes, I've actually done both. The first mentoring I've had actually transitioned to sponsorship. And the difference between the two is when you seek out a mentor who is outside your chain of command, who is higher than you, who you admire, who you want to get advice from, but then ended up transitioning to a sponsorship where I'm actually now in the chain of command of that person. But mentorship is extremely important. The research shows that women who are in connection with higher level managers are more likely to advance than those who don't. And more men seem to find those connections. So be bold and seek them out. Look for somebody you admire who is in a higher level position than you, who may be in a position you eventually want to have, and ask. That's what I would say as far as informal mentorship goes. We underestimate probably the ways that people in higher level position actually do want to help out folks who are in the lower ranks. So I would say ask, be bold. And then also, I did participate in a formal mentorship program through NC State in my doctoral program, and that was very helpful. I knew this woman, Dr. Mary Ritling at Davidson, was the president of Davidson Community College. She was my formal mentor, but I picked her well before I entered the program. She inspired me. She was a change agent, came in as a change agent. And the first time I saw her speak, I was just in awe. So I sought her out. I said, I really want to learn from you. I want to learn about career paths. So I guess in both cases, both formal and informal, the way I did it was I just found people I admired and wanted to learn from them. And fortunately, I've always never been denied. So, and I think I know myself, I would never, I mean, I've always accepted the opportunity to mentor others with just great joy.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Tunisia, what about you? Have you had mentors? Have you sought them out?
Yes, and kind of like Carrie, there are two ways that I have looked for mentors in my career. Some of them have been leaders within my organization, but oftentimes, because sometimes leaders within your organization may not have the necessary bandwidth to focus on the level of growth and development that you need. But I've found the most success to be people that are in leadership roles in my profession, but in other organizations that I have met, either through networking opportunities, conferences that I've attended. And you would be amazed at how many women and leaders are open and willing to be a mentor to someone, outside of their organization. They have more flexibility in mentoring someone outside of their organization because they don't have to deal with any stigmatisms of maybe favoritisms or, working with groups on projects and stuff that they're not able to do with everybody else. And so I find the greatest mentor relationship really work better with HR leaders that were outside of my organization for those particular reasons.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point. And of seeking out folks who you then perhaps don't end up in their chain of command or that kind of thing. Beth, I didn't have you initially queued for this question, but I would love to know kind of your feelings about mentorship as well.
I am grateful for amazing people in my life who have been leaders that, they helped guide me, they helped me instruct me, and they inspired me. And I think that the thing that I learned most is when you're engaged with people that are great leaders, that have accomplished amazing things, you start to understand that they're people who care deeply, and you start to connect with them at a level of understanding that the best leaders go far beyond just their experience. They come into people, it becomes people who have vision, they have strategy, they have a vision for what can be. And to me, that's one of the greatest roles of leadership I've ever encountered, are people who believe change can happen and they are a part of it. And I have always had an opportunity to sort of work on behind some of these folks and to see what happens when there's great vision and passion behind it. And it's just learning that, yes, we do make differences, and people that do, it's just an energy and power they bring to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I know for myself, I've very much valued having mentors who are willing to push back and challenge me. They're my champions, they're my cheerleaders, but they're also, if I'm like, oh, I'm not going to do this thing, they're immediately like, oh, no. Why aren't you going to do the thing? Quite honestly, I am in the current position that I have because of one of my mentors, because I wasn't going to apply for the position. And one of my mentors essentially sat me down and had a conversation that was like building me up, but also challenging me. And so having mentors who are willing to ask you the hard questions and make you really kind of think through those, I think is incredibly valuable as well. Carrie, did you have any additional thoughts? You look like you had a thought. No, you're still on mute.
I couldn't agree with you more. And it doesn't mean, I really like this talk about having somebody outside your organization, outside your chain of command, but I just wanted to emphasize sometimes your mentors were your previous, in your chain of command, so you can have varying types of mentoring relationships But you have, I think you hit the nail on the head, Kasey. You have to be with somebody who's going to tell you the real deal and the real story, both encourage you and build you up, but also not sugarcoat it. Like, I've seen this pattern over the past 5 years. You may want to look at this.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank y'all. So we're coming to our last, we're at our last question of our formalized planned questions. So for those in the audience, if you have questions, please do submit them in the chat to Desmond. She is going to then pass those questions on to us. So in this world of COVID and being on different digital platforms for meetings, Zoom and Teams and GoToWebinar and all of these things, how are y'all dealing with feelings of burnout, especially in a virtual and remote setting where maybe you don't have physical access to some of your support network, et cetera. So Beth, what would you, have you been experiencing that kind of digital fatigue, and how are you working through it if you are?
So I find that some of these meetings you can sit in, an hour, a 2 or 3 hour meeting, you start to lose focus and you can't keep focus, that people are talking and it's hard to listen sometimes. And I do find that making sure that you take a break. Everybody gets a break every 30 minutes to go walk, get a drink, making sure that's incorporated into these Zoom calls. The other thing I'm finding is I love, whenever possible, to say, let's just do an audio call. Let's not do a face-to-face. If it's an interview or if it's something very important, but if it's people you're talking to a lot, sometimes it's like, let's just turn off the visual, let's talk. And I find I don't have to spend time fixing my hair or putting on something that I look decent in, or even putting on makeup. It's just like, give us a break and let's just communicate, as opposed to this point of looking at each other. And I think the other thing that's so critical during this period is taking time for yourself, taking a walk, going out and just sitting and being quiet, walk your dog, listen to music, put on some music and dance and scream and just get crazy, because I just think the self-care is so important. This is such a time of stress, and if we don't take care of ourselves, we're not going to be of value to anyone. So I would say self-care is critical, and do what you need to do to get through this period.
Mm-hmm. What about you, Carrie?
Yes, I echo what Beth has said. I would couch it in the terms of healthy boundaries. In education, especially when we've transitioned to online, I know it, well, not only in education, but in other fields, it almost feels like you have to be on 24/7, especially our educators. And what we preach, what I think is really important, is to have healthy boundaries. And the way I do that is, I get dressed in the morning like I'm going to work. I just come upstairs to work now, rather than get in my car. And I try to shorten my meetings so that there are no 2-hour meetings, but that you can accomplish with a good agenda, you can accomplish in a half an hour, right? Because I do feel that burnout. I do feel Zoom burnout by the end of the day, but with healthy boundaries, taking a break, 30-minute break, lunch, do some yoga poses and things like that, getting exercise every day to make sure you're sleeping well. I think the tendency is to, feel because you have access to online 24/7 that we should be on 24/7, and I don't think that's good. I think that would create burnout. So that's the ways that you can prevent it. Going to a different location when the numbers are low, a coffee shop to have your meeting. Like you said, Beth, maybe back in the days when the numbers were lower, maybe, you'd meet up a friend that you were going to have a meeting with for a coffee shop, or something I've done is a walking meeting, so there are ways to do it, but self-care is so huge, and I do it through those healthy boundaries and making sure I'm on at work, and then at the end of the day, I'm off, and now I'm at home.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Tunisia, what about you? How are you navigating the digital fatigue if you're experiencing it?
I'm echoing what these other ladies have said, and it's more about me just taking these healthy mental breaks when I need them. Managing my calendar, because it's much easier to do that we are experiencing this whole new way of working in a remote world. I can manage the expectations more. I can manage meetings a lot better, and so being careful to do that and say work, I need to put work stoppage, and I need to listen to my own advice sometimes. So, it's easy to be remote and, 8 o'clock at night, remember that, I need to get something done, have a thought, and because I'm home, go right back to my computer and continue working. So I have to do a better job, and have done a better job now at putting those boundaries and separating work from my family life, because it's so important that we maintain some type of structure in our home so that our families don't feel like we are working 24 hours a day.
Mm-hmm.
Because that in itself will create a lot of burnout and a lot of mental stress and things that we have to maintain mental health in all of this remote environment. And so, the same as the other ladies, managing my calendar and managing expectations of my time.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I've found in my leisure time, I've been working on disconnecting from screens. Reading a book in its physical form, a paper book, or going for a walk, etc. But just that my leisure time doesn't also always include me in front of a screen, so that my eyes and my brain gets a break from that kind of digital landscape. That's one of the things that I've been doing. And one of my boundary setting things is that my phone does not get work emails. I actually go onto a web browser on my phone to log into my email that way, so there are steps involved. So I'm not getting the work email notifications, because in my past prior life, I used to work in education and worked residentially, and so we would get emails around the clock, and I had to be able to answer them. And that was one of those boundaries I set when I came out of that world was, I answer email between this time and this time, and unless it's a major thing, like I know there's a big deadline that I need to be keeping on top of, I don't have any of those kinds of notifications on my phone, so that when I walk away from my work computer, I'm done for the day. So that's another potential boundary setting that people can do. We have gotten a question in the chat. How do you expect the workplace to change over the next 5 years to encourage more women into work? Would any of you like to take that one on?
Well, go ahead, Tunisia, you go.
Okay, what I was going to say is, so the question was, how do we expect it to change to encourage more women in the workplace? I think the fact that companies are now reimagining how they do business and how they can do business effectively and improve profit margins, they've been able to do that successfully now with remote workers. And I think companies that have more positions where women can work remote and they can still now balance, life with those, especially working mothers, are now those barriers for working mothers not being able to work because of childcare, or having to pick up a child from school. So companies are becoming more flexible, and so the focus is shifting from just a normal 8 to 5, meaning you've got to commit the hours, and they're focusing, the shift is now they're looking at outcomes, producing the same outcomes regardless of the hours. And I think those flexible companies, I think we will probably see more women enter the workforce in those particular companies that are more flexible.
Absolutely. Carrie, did you have a thought?
Yeah, when I think back of what a game changer, I love how you're expressing, Trinesia, this in the terms of opportunity, because there is so much opportunity. I mean, it's a terrible thing, but looking at what the positives are with having to go all online. When I think back what a game changer it would have been for me, I actually stepped out of the workforce to do part-time work when I had my children. It's a choice I made. But if I had had the opportunity to do more online work, I am pretty sure I would not have stepped back to part-time. I'm pretty sure it would have been a game changer for me and my family. And everybody has to make their own choices, you know, but for me, that was the choice at the time. So I think it is a game changer. I think it's a positive game changer for women, especially in this area of growth of Wake County and looking at the job market and the skills that are needed in the job market.
Absolutely. Another question is, have you noticed a trend towards a more diverse recruitment policy from hiring managers?
Well, this is Trinesia. I think it's still early. I think it takes a little bit more time to see trends develop. But what I can say is, what I am seeing is the recruitment efforts have now expanded exponentially, and they're not as localized anymore, because positions now are permanently going to a remote type of position. And with that, you know, organizations are able to cast a much wider net. And by casting a much wider net, you know, you have more opportunity to increase the diversity of the candidates that you're reaching. But, you know, some of the other ladies may have, you know, some different experiences, but, you know, just from my perspective, as a deputy HR director, it's a bit early right now to really say where that trend is going.
Just say that there's an intentionality among the people that I'm working with and a demand that we look to make sure our pool is diverse. And so to take the opportunity to really focus on it, the whole ideas around equity, inclusion, and diversity is a critical conversation. I think that has to come up at the beginning of a search anytime. And I am so excited that, because I've done these searches for a long time, that now I'm starting to see, by reaching out to the right networks, our range of diverse candidates is extraordinary, and that we have such talented, incredible women and women of color and every type of diversity you can imagine. They're coming and they're very honest about the fact that, you know, I'm very proud of who I am. And so I find now that the pool is incredibly diverse, and I love it. And they're incredibly talented people. So I see it as changing remarkably, and I'm very excited about that.
Wonderful, thank you. There's another question. Says there are challenges in reaching gender equality in the C-suite, in that upper executive level. What are policies that can be put into place to move organizations towards more gender equality and equity? Who would like to jump in first?
I mean, I will. So in terms of policies to address that, I mean, right now, most companies, most organizations, with, you know, the climate that we find ourselves in right now, with racial equity and diversity, some of it is stemming from, you know, things that have happened, you know, with the George Floyd murders. I mean, they have just triggered a whole mindset change in how we look at people and how we evaluate people as a whole. I think that has made more companies more race and gender aware than they have ever been made aware before. I think most companies are now starting to take a look at themselves and how their organizations are structured and voluntarily saying, I want us to look different and be better and resemble the customers that we serve. And so I think, what I have been seeing is companies are developing or strengthening their diversity, equity, and inclusion programs that they already have. And I think a lot of those policies that are being developed around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's an annual process that you have to always go back and look at it. It's not we create one policy, put it in place, and that's it. That's the solution. That's just the first start of a solution being in place. So it's constantly looking at pay equity among men and women, and also pay equity among people of color and their counterparts as well. So there's several components to that, but an entire diversity, equity, and inclusion program is really what's needed. And those policies developed around that program can really help move a company from where they are to help them to identify the steps to reach the outcomes that they're really trying to reach.
Yeah, absolutely. And the research does also show us that women, especially women of color, when you disaggregate the data, that women can often get stuck and not promoted as much. And so, part of those policies, et cetera, and companies doing the work of looking within to see, well, are we inadvertently, perhaps, trapping people? And it's not as easy to get promoted for women and other underrepresented groups. So, if you don't have people coming through the pipeline, that there's that even smaller number. Sorry, I have a cat who's trying to escape the room. An even smaller number that to get into the C-suite. So, by doing those DEI programs and doing that internal work is really important so that companies can identify their gaps and then be very intentional in creating their outcomes and goals and figuring out a plan for reaching them. All right, I think that's the last question that has been put to us. Okay, one more. How do organizations deal with unconscious bias? Beth, would you like to jump in first?
I'm going to let Carrie or Tunisia talk about it because we have such a short time. So.
Yeah, so that's a great segue. I was going to say, riffing off of Tunisia, making equity a priority is number one. An organization that has made equity a priority through its mission, through its strategic planning, is when you know that it's going to move the needle. Some of the research that Wake Invest in Women has done, and the literature supports this, is that the bias, there's varying levels of it, but we can explain the gender gap by a few factors. One is representation is a big factor in Wake County. There's just not enough women who are represented in occupations where the salaries are highest. And so you can look at all those factors. Representation, education is not one of those factors because women have the education. Years of experience comes into play, marital status comes into play, but then there's this certain amount that we cannot explain by looking at the data. There's a certain amount, and that varies between 30 or 20 or 30%. And what the research says is that that's where you have systemic bias that may be in operation within our culture. It's a cultural issue. And that the way that you change that is by first making equity a priority, and then making intentional advances in training, education, changing the culture of your company and your organization. It starts with leadership. It starts at the top. It starts with making a decision. And some of the Wake, Invest in Women strategies center around that. One of them is soon, don't want to unveil anything, but a challenge to actually track it and see if you are closing the gap in the C-suite. But it starts at the top. It starts with leadership, I think.
All right, we're still muted. Tunisia, do you have anything else to add?
I think, again, there has been a great awareness among organizations now, and implicit bias training is something that I would recommend an organization do, is to start having those tough conversations and bringing awareness, reviewing policies and procedures that you have in place to ensure that there are no implicit biases embedded within your practices, your policies, and the way you promote, the way you develop and train, who gets developed and trained, who gets increases and raises and merit amounts, the way they're awarded, how they are awarded. So you have to look at every area of your organization for those particular biases, even in the recruitment and selection process. So every area of your organization, you have to review it to make sure that you are not, inadvertently, singling out or disparaging particular groups that are underrepresented.
Wonderful. We have another question, and Beth, since you suggested this, I'm going to throw this question to you. When referring to balance, what's the best professional or most professional way to decline a video chat and ask for a phone call instead when you are feeling that burnout? So how do you navigate that conversation?
It's really interesting because I often have people that will, and I'm scheduling a lot of these calls too, and they're interviews where it's important that we see each other. But if I've seen this person, I just say, let's do a video call. And I would say nobody has ever said, I want to look at you. So I just think it is being intentional about that. And surprisingly, the more I'll say, let's do an audio call, everybody's like, yeah, that's a great idea. So I would say suggest it. And if they want to go with visual, great, do that too, but at least try.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Last question for the entire panel. What is the best piece of career advice you have ever received? I'll let you ponder that for a moment.
So for me, I think the best career advice I have ever received was, do not let labels and other people's limitations box me in. Take my own career and advance it and go wherever I want to go in my career. And that took my mind, it shifted my mindset from looking at how other people were evaluating me and more about how I was evaluating myself and where I wanted my career to go. And then it helped me to surround myself with people, the right mentors, to help me get to where I wanted to be career-wise. And that was the best career advice anyone has ever given me. Really not to be chained by other people's opinions on where I should be in my career, but I took it upon myself and advanced my own career. And it worked very well for me.
That's powerful. Thank you.
Mine was follow your heart and follow your intuition. Follow what you believe you should be doing. And, it came at a point when I had been really somewhat disrespected in my position and had some extraordinary gender bias issues. And it was a really hard time because I needed the money. I was supporting a family. I was a single mom. And it was a point it said, just follow your heart and follow your intuition and take that, be courageous and take that next step. And I did. I never looked back, and things just continued to flow because I knew I wasn't confined to this limited imagination I had about who I was and what I could do, but it was something larger of just trusting, knowing that you're going to be guided to what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, I think that you know, confidence has always been my Achilles heel. So having the mentors in my life to say, you need to do this and you should do this, that this you can do this, has been incredibly helpful. And so when I made the leap of kind of seeing myself as a practitioner, a teacher, well, first a geologist, I came from industry, and then a teacher, to encourage me to go into administration and leadership, that was a big step for me. I was concerned about it, but I am so glad I did, because I think I'm a better administrator, and it's developed my leadership skills that I didn't even recognize in myself. Others recognized it in me before I did myself. So I've had to learn how to, again, this upselling yourself. I point the finger at myself. I tend to downsell myself. And so I've discovered my leadership skills, which are far better, I think, my teaching skills ever were. And so making that leap was a huge step for me in my career.
Mhm. I will jump in as well. Carrie, earlier on you mentioned there was a time when people would graduate with a degree, work in that field, retire in that field. And I had a mentor who said, you are not limited to the degree that you graduated with, and that you can, the world is far bigger than that one pathway, and that to try. And one of my favorite, when I'm feeling unconfident, one of my favorite quotes is, I'm here to learn and to grow. And so it's okay if I am feeling unconfident. I don't have to be confident in all things, but that I'm going to learn, and I'm going to grow where I'm planted, essentially. And so that was another great piece of advice that I had received. Would love to just say thank you, panelists, for being amazing to work with, but also for giving of your time today and answering all of these questions.
Thank you, Dr. Kasey, Tronesia, Carrie, and Ms. Debbie. Thank you all so much for joining us today. This was extremely beneficial and helpful to us all. Thank you so very much. The Chamber has so many important upcoming events to continue the conversation around leadership. Please join us for our annual leadership conference on December 8th and 9th. Our conference theme is Leadership Accelerated, Planning for the Future. This topic will explore key concepts impacting the region and how to lead during times of uncertainty. Join us also for Launch 2020 on January 12th, which will kick off the business year predicting trends in the economy, commercial real estate, economic development, hiring, and talent. Our next Chamber Professional Women's Luncheon will be on January 29th. 2021. The topic is the state of women in leadership. To register for our events, please visit our website. Thank you and have a great day. Thank you so much.